Chapter 1071. Xiao He, Xiao Bai, and Baisher looked at each other. They really didn't know how to answer Baisher's question. After thinking for a while, Xiao Bai reluctantly admitted, "It's possible. When they were with Master, they were afraid that Master would despise them, so they ate in a more refined manner. Ever since He Mu came, they were unrestrained. Anyway, He Mu was the easiest to deal with and was obedient. Was this the price of being willful?" However, the three little fellows had obviously guessed wrong. Bailey Hongzhuang's thoughts were very simple. She wanted to communicate with Di Beichen properly. Now that their relationship had warmed up, Di Beichen really liked holding her in his arms. At this time, it would be fine if it was just the two of them, but the three little beasts were watching from behind. This was really a little embarrassing. As Bailey Hongzhuang walked into the house, Di Beichen also noticed Bailey Hongzhuang's expression. What was his wife thinking? Just as Di Beichen was about to ask, a fragrant wind suddenly blew over. Bailey Hongzhuang hugged him. Lowering his head to look at the person in his arms, Di Beichen's gaze softened. However, there was a trace of nervousness in his deep and charming eyes. "Wife, what happened?" Di Beichen wrapped his arms around Bailey Hongzhuang's slender waist. His deep and magnetic voice was filled with worry. Could it be that his wife had been wronged outside today? "Why are you so good to me?" Bailey Hongzhuang's beautiful face was pressed against Di Beichen's chest. Her voice was muffled, a little depressed, and a little pained. Ever since she got together with Di Beichen had always been considerate of her and accommodated her. No matter when or where, Di Beichen was always meticulous with her. He helped her raise her cultivation level and helped her understand the mystery of her birth. In comparison, she did not treat Di Beichen as well. Hearing this, the corners of Di Beichen's mouth revealed a light smile, but his eyes became even more gentle and doting. "You came here just to ask me why I'm so nice to you?" Bailey Hongzhuang just hugged Di Beichen tightly and did not answer. "You are my wife, the only woman that I, Di Beichen, love in my life. If I don't treat you well, who should I treat well?" Di Beichen's smile was light, but his dark eyes were full of deep affection. Bailey Hongzhuang was his treasure, and he wanted to treat her well all the time. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were slightly moist. She felt a little stifled, but deep in her eyes, there was a smile that came from the bottom of her heart. She was so lucky to meet him in the vast sea of people, fall in love with him, and become the love of his heart. It was only now that she understood how Di Beichen felt when he said that he was very grateful to Li Chengqian. She was also grateful to Li Chengqian now. If it were not for Li Chengqian, they might not have interacted so much, and she would have missed such a perfect man. Di Beichen saw that Bailey Hongzhuang in his arms only lowered her head and did not speak. He could not help but bend down to look at Bailey Hongzhuang. "Wife, what's wrong?" However, when Di Beichen saw that Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were vaguely moist, his heart ached. "Beichen." Bailey Hongzhuang opened her mouth and looked up at Di Beichen. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang was about to speak, Di Beichen covered her red lips with his. She tossed and turned. Chapter 1072. When Di Beichen let go of Bailey Hongzhuang's cheeks were flushed and her eyes were blurred. A pair of watery eyes stared at Di Beichen, making Di Beichen's heart melt into water. Di Beichen directly carried Bailey Hongzhuang to the side and sat down, while Bailey Hongzhuang also sat on Di Beichen's lap. Quietly hugging Bailey Hongzhuang, Di Beichen's handsome and gentle face rippled with a light and soft smile. "Wife, don't breathe and think nonsense in the future." Bailey Hongzhuang leaned on Di Beichen's chest and nodded slightly. When the blurred eyes returned to clarity, Bailey Hongzhuang sat up straight and her beautiful face was tinged with a trace of seriousness. "Tiangang sect has something to ask you to go back?" Di Beichen's dark and deep handsome eyes flashed with a faint light. "You know." At this moment, Di Beichen understood why Hongzhuang had such a reaction just now. "Since Tiangang sect has something urgent to ask you to go back, then let's go back first." We can come back for this trial anytime. Bailey Hongzhuang's phoenix eyes stared at Di Beichen, her beautiful face showing some helplessness. I know you are good to me, and I don't want to affect your business because of me. At first, Di Beichen left Tiangang's sect and came to Fengbo country because he had no choice. Now that Di Beichen's leg disease has been cured, he should have returned to Tiangang's sect long ago. Just because he wanted to be by her side, Di Beichen had never gone back. Although she had never heard any news about Tiangang's sect from Di Beichen and Heimu, she also knew that as the young lord of Tiangang's sect, Di Beichen had been outside for a long time without returning, which would definitely cause a lot of dissatisfaction. This time, the Tiangang sect does have something for me to return to, but I hope that you can complete the trial. Once you get the inheritance of the Blood Chi Tower, it will be of great help to you. Di Beichen's eyes darkened. There was a flicker of light in his deep eyes, but it was too obscure for Bailey Hongzhuang to see it clearly. It's okay. I'll have a chance in the future too. Bailey Hongzhuang looked indifferent. She naturally wanted to obtain the inheritance of the Blood Chi Tower, but the last level of the trial was too difficult to break through. Although the first 8 levels were difficult, she was able to overcome them. However, facing the 9th level of the trial, she felt powerless. However, she still believed that she would be able to pass. For them now, it was obvious that Di Beichen's return to Tiangang's sect was the most important thing. As for other things, they could put them aside for the time being. It wouldn't be too late to return to the Bloodground Abyss after everything was done. After all, she was also full of curiosity about the other training ground in the Bloodground Abyss. She believed that she would definitely return to Tiangang's sect in the future. Don't you want to know why I'm returning to Tiangang's sect this time? Di Beichen asked with a smile. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyes and blinked. If you want to tell me, I'm naturally willing to listen. The selection competition that happens once every 5 years is about to begin. Di Beichen's eyes were distant and deep, and his handsome face revealed a trace of complexity. Selection competition? Bailey Hongzhuang was a little puzzled. The internal selection competition of Tiangang's sect? Di Beichen shook his head slightly. Every sect needs fresh blood. Therefore, the selection competition that happens once every 5 years is a competition that every sect specially prepares to recruit young cultivators. Chapter 1073. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed with wisdom. A sect's recruitment of new blood had always been a grand affair. Just a sect's recruitment of disciples was already a grand occasion. Furthermore, according to Di Beichen's words, this was a joint recruitment of all the sections. One could imagine the scale of this event. It could be called a grand occasion in the Shengxian continent. That's right. Di Beichen nodded. Every time a sect recruits a disciple, it's always very eye-catching. Any cultivator with strength would want to give it a try. Bailey Hongzhuang stared at Di Beichen. You hope that I can complete the trial for the selection competition? She immediately understood. If all the outstanding cultivators in the Shengxian continent were to gather, then the competition in this selection competition would be extremely fierce. If one wanted to stand out, they would undoubtedly have to be the best of the younger generation. Di Beichen held Bailey Hongzhuang's hand. According to my selfishness, I hope that you can directly enter the Tiangang sect with me. Following Di Beichen's words, Bailey Hongzhuang's expression became somewhat complicated. According to my understanding, the Tiangang sect has never directly recruited disciples. The Tiangang sect was famous in the Shengxian continent. To be able to become a disciple of the Tiangang sect was the dream of many cultivators. Once one became a disciple of the Tiangang sect, it was no different from a carp leaping through the dragon's gate. It could be said to bring honor to one's ancestors. Not only that, the cultivation resources in the Tiangang sect were far more abundant than outside. Cultivating in the Tiangang sect would allow one's strength to rise much faster than outside. Bailey Hongzhuang naturally wanted to go to the Tiangang sect. Not only because of the abundant cultivation resources, but also because Di Baichen was the young sect master of the Tiangang sect. As long as she could stay in the Tiangang sect with Di Baichen, then many problems would be solved. Those who wanted to secretly scheme would have no chance to take advantage of it. However, she was even more aware that once she was directly arranged by Di Baichen to become a disciple of the Tiangang sect, it would undoubtedly attract the criticism of everyone. Those cultivators who coveted Di Baichen's position as the young master would definitely take this opportunity to attack Di Baichen, and Di Baichen, as the young master of Tiangang sect, would also end up with the title of covering up for his wife, unable to distinguish right from wrong. Most importantly, Han Xiling was also there. In front of her love rival, she had her own dignity. What she wanted was to stand upright in front of Di Baichen and not let anyone have a chance to attack her. More importantly, she wanted to prove to Han Xiling that she, Bailey Hongzhuang, was the right person for Di Baichen. Therefore, she couldn't just go in like this. She didn't want to leave such a topic of discussion when she confronted Han Xiling in the future. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's expression, Di Baichen had already understood Bailey Hongzhuang's plan. In fact, from the beginning, he had already guessed that Bailey Hongzhuang would make such a decision. He couldn't be more clear about his wife's temperament. She was proud, especially her dignity, which couldn't be trampled on. Not only that, she was so persistent about their feelings for each other that she wouldn't let anyone have a chance to attack her. This was his wife, Di Baichen. Perhaps she was a little stubborn, but it was precisely because of this stubbornness that made people feel even more heartache and love her deeply. It was precisely because of this that he hoped that Bailey Hongzhuang could obtain the inheritance of the Blood Qi Tower. In this way, Bailey Hongzhuang's strength would increase, and her safety would also increase a lot. To him, the most important thing was Bailey Hongzhuang's safety. Chapter 1074. You want to participate in this year's selection? Di Baichen stared at Bailey Hongzhuang, his dark eyes flashing with a complicated light. Although it was a question, Di Baichen's tone was firm. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her phoenix eyes and stared at Di Baichen. She nodded slightly. I want to participate. Wife, you know that I'm not afraid of others talking behind my back. I only hope that you can safely stay by my side. Di Baichen's voice was deep and magnetic. He looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a sincere gaze. Over the years, he had been through a lot. He didn't care about ordinary words. Bailey Hongzhuang wrapped her arms around Di Baichen's neck. I understand, but I want to stand by your side. The next time I see Han Xiling, I will defeat her. Her deep and beautiful eyes were filled with a firm and decisive light. The last time Han Xiling saw her, she still remembered clearly the disdain she showed. No matter how proud Han Xiling was, her pride wasn't any less than Han Xiling's. The battle between her and Han Xiling would eventually come to an end. During this period of time, Han Xiling had done so many things behind her back. She clearly remembered it all. She had never been a generous person, especially to her enemies. The next time they met, she would crush Han Xiling's pride. Di Baichen nodded slightly. He understood Bailey Hongzhuang's determination. Therefore, he didn't try to persuade her anymore. In fact, he also understood that participating in the selection was a good experience for Bailey Hongzhuang. If Bailey Hongzhuang obtained good results in the selection, then she would enter everyone's eyes. Because the selection had always been important, the first place of each selection would become famous in the Shengxian continent and become the target of all the sections. This choice was actually not wrong. No matter what kind of results Bailey Hongzhuang obtains, as long as she can legitimately enter Tiangang Zone, it is also a good thing. He didn't care about other people's attacks on him, but Tiangang sect was also not peaceful. What he didn't want to see the most was Bailey Hongzhuang being attacked. If that happened, his heart would ache. I support your decision. Di Baichen smiled faintly. No matter what Bailey Hongzhuang did, he would support her. Thank you, Baichen. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes shone with a trace of emotion. This was her persistence, and even more fortunately, Di Beichen had always supported her. There's no need for thanks between you and me. Di Beichen rubbed Bailey Hongzhuang's soft hand, but his eyes were filled with seriousness and seriousness. Wife, regarding the Lan family, I found some news. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes suddenly froze. Her beautiful face also had a moment of stagnation. What news? Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was indifferent, but there was a trace of uncontrollable nervousness in the depths of her eyes. She had always been curious about her background, especially when she found out that her biological parents were forced to leave her in front of the general's estate. She was even more worried about her parents' safety. However, with the platform she had touched, it was simply not enough for her to have the opportunity to understand the Lan family. The Lan family was the true colossus of the Shengxian continent. Their foundation was stable and complicated. It was extremely difficult to understand them. The current her had yet to reach that level. Chapter 1075. Hearing Di Beichen's words, Bailey Hongzhuang immediately understood. So you're saying that as long as I drip my blood on this jade pendant, I'll know if I'm a descendant of the Lan family? Bailey Hongzhuang took out the jade pendant. Her pretty face was filled with astonishment. She didn't think that the Lan family would have such a miraculous method. It seems that the Lan family really didn't have a problem with their bloodline. Di Beichen nodded. That's right. You can give it a try. Alright, I'll give it a try. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. She placed the jade pendant on the table and took out a sharp blade. She had bought this sharp blade when she had obtained the parchment scroll. Now that she had it in her hands, it would occasionally be of use. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's curious expression, Di Beichen's deep, handsome eyes were filled with seriousness and depth. After asking around, he had a good understanding of the Lan family's secret. However, this secret was far too heavy. If possible, he hoped that Bailey Hongzhuang wasn't really a descendant of the Lan family. Otherwise, Bailey Hongzhuang would have to bear too many burdens. When he thought of Bailey Hongzhuang's humiliated childhood, he found it hard to imagine how such a petite girl would bear all the burden of the Lan family's grievances. Bailey Hongzhuang didn't notice Di Beichen's expression. She was completely focused on the jade pendant. At this point, other than Qin Yayun's diary and this jade pendant, there was no other evidence to prove her identity. Therefore, she really wanted to know who her biological parents were. If she really was a descendant of the Lan family, then everything would become clear. The sharp blade cut Bailey Hongzhuang's finger and a drop of blood immediately appeared. However, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't even frown. She immediately dripped the drop of blood onto the jade pendant. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's eyes fell upon the jade pendant. They both wanted to know the final result. The jade pendant was snow-white and almost transparent. It was exquisite and soft to the touch. Bailey Hongzhuang knew at first glance that this jade pendant was something good. However, she didn't expect it to have such an effect. Not long after the drop of blood had dripped onto the jade pendant, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen realized that the drop of blood had gradually seeped into the jade pendant. The originally sparkling and translucent jade pendant was stained red. Seeing this scene, Bailey Hongzhuang's heart skipped a beat. It seemed that Di Beichen's judgment was right from the start. This jade pendant really was the Lan family's keepsake, and she really was a descendant of the Lan family. Di Beichen's expression also changed. He didn't expect all of this to be true. Bailey Hongzhuang picked up the jade pendant. The change of this jade pendant was really magical. After it was stained with a little blood, she found that gradually, the blood was also fading, and eventually it became the original white color. However, that drop of blood had turned into a bright red mark on the jade pendant, adding a trace of uniqueness. Bailey Hongzhuang turned around. Her exquisite and perfect face revealed a trace of emotion. It seems that I really am a member of the Lan family. In that case, Lan Yunxiao is my father. At this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang had already confirmed her identity. Aside from this, There was no other possibility. Di Baichen nodded slightly with a complicated expression. It seems that you really are a member of the Lan family. Chapter 1076. Originally, Bailey Hongzhuang was very curious about her identity. Now that she had confirmed it, she was even more curious about the Lan family. She wanted to know why Lan Yunxiao and the Lan family had turned against each other, and why the Lan family had chased after them. She knew that everything would be very heavy, but no matter how heavy the truth was, she had to find out. Because that was what she had to bear. Di Baichen sank into silence. When he first learned of this news, even his heart was hard to conceal. He was afraid that after Hongzhuang learned of this, Bailey Hongzhuang sized up Di Baichen. When she saw the obscure light in Di Baichen's eyes, her expression changed. Baichen, there are some things that I was born to bear. It's destined that I can't escape from them. I know that something very serious must have happened when Father took us away from the Lan family. No matter how hard it is to accept, I can bear it. Bailey Hongzhuang's voice was heavy. After being with Di Baichen for so long, she had long developed a tacit understanding with him. Just by looking at Di Baichen's expression, she could guess some things. She was afraid that the reason behind this was more complicated than she thought, and more difficult to accept. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's resolute expression, Di Baichen muttered to himself for a moment before nodding. Hongzhuang, I will tell you everything, but you must be mentally prepared. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded, her voice gentle and calm. I'll be fine. Back then, the Lan family's patriarch, Lan Yangqiu, had two sons. The eldest, Lan Jingquang, had outstanding strength and a steady but treacherous personality. Lan Yunxiao was the youngest son that Lan Yangqiu had always been proud of. He had an extraordinary bearing and outstanding talent. Although Lan Jingquang's strength wasn't bad, he wasn't as well liked as Lan Yunxiao. Not only that, Lan Yunxiao was already Lan Yangqiu's favorite successor, and the entire Lan family recognized him as the young master. Under these circumstances, Lan Jingquang was naturally unwilling to accept it. However, the entire family supported Lan Yunxiao, so he could only endure it. Later on, Lan Jingquang married Yu Manlan, the direct descendant daughter of the Yu family, and gave birth to Lan Qinyan. And your father, Lan Yunxiao, married your mother, Mu Lingbing. Mu Lingbing didn't come from an illustrious family like Yu Manlan, but she was also an outstanding cultivator. She was an outstanding disciple of Sun Moon Palace, and she gave birth to you. Bailey Hongzhuang quietly listened to Di Baichen's narration. She had already guessed that what happened to her parents must have something to do with Lan Jingquang. However, she couldn't figure out what kind of method they used to deal with her. With Lan Yunxiao's reputation in the Lan family, it was reasonable to say that if something happened, everyone should stand on his side and support him. What kind of method did Lan Jingquang use to hurt her parents and make the entire family stand on his side and her parents become enemies with the entire Lan family? The more Bailey Hongzhuang thought about it, the more complicated it all became. Wife, do you still remember your Dantian shattering? Di Baichen suddenly asked. Chapter 1077. Everyone was only curious about this matter in private. The more they thought about it, the more they felt that the possibility was not small. However, no one dared to confirm it. If it's true, then it's too terrifying. Back then, the emperor fell into the cycle of reincarnation because of the goddess. If we're facing such a storm because of the goddess, then wouldn't we have a war with the god realm? Why is that? Kusie asked in puzzlement. Are you stupid? The woman looked at him helplessly. The goddess is now married to the emperor. She is now our infernal queen. This means that the goddess also plans to be with the emperor. If the celestial realm is unwilling, the emperor will not let his wife go. Then, wouldn't a war be inevitable? Previously, because of the matter with the Fourth Highness, the flames of war had just been extinguished. I never expected that we would have to face the celestial realm again. The woman sighed faintly. Once they fought, it would be inevitable that people would be plunged into misery and suffering. If that's really the case, then the goddess is a femme fatale. Bailey Hongzhuang's appearance surfaced in Ku Xie's mind. Thinking about it carefully, she really had the qualifications to be a femme fatale. With such a beautiful face, how many men would be willing to give up everything for her? Previously, she felt that the fact that she and Kitsune could wait for the Infernal Emperor for so many years, no matter how she looked at it, Bailey Hongzhuang would be dealt a blow by this relationship. This was because how long had she been with the Infernal Emperor? It was at most a few decades. How could it be compared to a relationship that had lasted more than 100 years? Furthermore, she came from a small place. No matter how she looked at it, she was not worthy of the Emperor. This inferiority complex was unavoidable, but there was no such thing in her. It was as though she had never felt inferior before. It was as though all these emotions did not belong to her. She was so confident that it made them feel ashamed. How can a person from a lower plane have such powerful alchemy skills? Have you forgotten that the goddess is the #1 alchemist in the celestial realm? The woman's words woke everyone up. The Infernal Queen's alchemy skills were so exquisite that it shocked them. Logically speaking, it was impossible for the Infernal Queen to have such exquisite alchemy skills. Even if she was a genius, it was impossible for her to understand the infernal realm's alchemy skills in such a short period of time. However, if she was the goddess, then everything could be explained. Whether it was the divine world or the devil world, everyone was very clear about the goddess' alchemy skills. She was extremely outstanding. No matter whether it was her strength or alchemy skills, she was an existence that others could only look up to. Back then, when they found out that the demon emperor, who had never been attracted to women, had fallen in love with the goddess, their first reaction wasn't that the two of them weren't compatible at all. Instead, they felt that the two of them were too compatible. This was clearly an alliance between the strong and the strong. Why was it that after so many years, no woman could move the Devil Emperor's heart? Because those women were not worthy at all. The goddess was the most outstanding woman in the entire celestial realm. For so many years, she had been pure and had few desires. Yet, she had fallen in love with their infernal emperor. Everyone felt that this was a good combination. It was just that no one expected such a thing to happen. Ku Xie, who originally thought that it was impossible, could no longer refute. Why was Bailey Hongzhuang always so confident when she saw them? Why did Kitsune choose to give up after chatting with her once? Chapter 1078. Then, Lan Qinyan successfully integrated with the Rainbow Pearl? Bailey Hongzhuang looked up at Di Beichen. She had already heard from Di Beichen that Lan Qinyan was the representative of the Lan family. Now, Lan Qinyan was also one of the most outstanding cultivators in the entire Shengxian continent. According to this, she was almost certain of this result. However, she instinctively hoped that Lan Qinyan did not succeed in the integration. This truth was much more tragic than any of the truths she had imagined before, and it was impossible for her to accept. Di Beichen looked deeply at Bailey Hongzhuang. From Bailey Hongzhuang's fluctuating gaze, he knew that Bailey Hongzhuang's heart was not calm. Just like how he found it hard to accept when he first found out about this truth. Moreover, this was something that Bailey Hongzhuang had to bear since she was born. That's right. Di Beichen said slowly, Yu Manlin's medical skills are also very good. However, this matter seemed to be the result of Yu Manlin's discussion with the Yu family. The Yu family was also involved in the plot to kill you. At that time, the Yu family had a godly doctor living in the Lan family. However, everyone in the Lan family only treated it as a visit and did not take it to heart. Presumably, that person was here to help Lan Qinyan integrate with the Rainbow Pearl. Bailey Hongzhuang's heart sank. Her nails were already deeply embedded in her palms. Dark red blood gradually flowed out and crescent-shaped marks appeared on her palms. However, in the face of such pain, Bailey Hongzhuang did not seem to feel it. This was because the pain in her heart was far more intense than the pain in her hand. According to the information I received, Lan Qingyan also did not succeed in the integration. Other than a specific successor, no one else's dantian could integrate with the rainbow pearl. Although the Yu family's medical skills are top-notch, they did not have a way to help Lan Qingyan integrate with the rainbow pearl. They only used a special method to integrate the rainbow pearl into Lan Qingyan's body. Even so, Lan Qingyan's cultivation talent is still amazing. It's not hard to imagine how great your cultivation talent would be with your rainbow dantian. Di Baichen couldn't hide the pain in his eyes. He had never thought that his beloved wife would suffer all this. Originally, she was supposed to be the genius young miss of the Lan family, an outstanding figure among the young cultivators of the entire Shengxian continent. She should have lived a life of luxury since she was young, enjoying the love of her family and the admiring gazes of young cultivators. However, because of this, Bailey Hongzhuang became a trash that everyone despised and ridiculed. She grew up in humiliation. Her status was no different from falling from heaven to hell. Wife Yu Di Baichen looked at Bailey Hongzhuang's pale little face. He just wanted to hold Bailey Hongzhuang in his arms. She looked so fragile, as if she could faint at any time. If he could, he really hoped that he could bear all of this in place of Bailey Hongzhuang. However, in the face of the past, he couldn't do anything. Compared to what Bailey Hongzhuang was going through at the moment, his words of comfort had no effect. Because, in this kind of situation, other than the person involved who could understand the pain she was going through, no one else could. Chapter 1079. Blood gradually flowed from her palms, spreading along her fingers. However, the strength of Bailey Hongzhuang's clenched hands did not loosen at all. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang like this, Di Baichen understood that the most important thing now was to tell Bailey Hongzhuang everything. The reason why he wanted Hongzhuang to obtain the inheritance was also because of Bailey Hongzhuang's background. This kind of enmity was as deep as the ocean. If she didn't take revenge, Hongzhuang wouldn't be happy for the rest of her life. Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing couldn't accept the news. Lan Yunxiao was furious and directly attacked Lan Jing. As for Mu Lingbing, she was on the verge of collapse when she saw Yu on the verge of death in swaddling clothes. The entire Lan family was shaken because of this. No one dared to believe that Lan Jingquang and Yu Manlan would do such a thing. The Lan family head, Lan Yangqiu, was furious and wanted to punish Lan Jingquang and Yu Manlan. However, Lan Yunxiao demanded that they die. Unfortunately, the Yu family also came out to take a look. This was the plan that the Yu family and Lan Jingquang had discussed for a long time. They had already prepared everything. Although the Lan family's cultivators knew that Lan Jingquang had wronged Yu, Lan Qingyan had already obtained the power of the rainbow pearl. The Lan family couldn't give up on the inheritance. Lan Yunxiao demanded an eye for an eye and destroyed Lan Qingyan's dantian. The entire family stopped Lan Yunxiao, who then went on a killing spree and completely broke off relations with the Lan family. Lan Yunxiao's strength was outstanding in the entire Lan family. At that time, the Lan family also lost a group of cultivators. However, Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing were no match for them. Later on, although Lan Yangqiu urged Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing to stay, they couldn't stay any longer. Bailey Hongzhuang bit her lip. She could imagine how tragic that scene was. Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing had always treated her like a treasure in their palms, treasuring her at all times. Her father was an extraordinary figure with an illustrious reputation in the entire Shengxian continent. Her mother was a rare beauty with a resounding reputation. As an outstanding disciple of the Sun Moon Palace, although she didn't have an illustrious family background, she was still an outstanding woman. When they saw their daughter, who was originally blessed by the ancestors of the Lan family, being treated in such a manner and being on the verge of death, their hearts collapsed and the hatred that seeped into their bones grew even stronger. Especially Lan Yunxiao. He was once the Lan family's family head, and was the center of attention. However, after such a thing happened, he couldn't even get justice for his daughter. What kind of irony was this? She could understand why Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing had broken off all relations with the Lan family at the cost of their lives. If it wasn't for his existence, they would have killed Lan Jingquang and the others even if they had to risk their lives. However, they had to take her away because she was in what kind forbearance? Forbearance, the feeling falling from heaven to hell? And all of this was because of Lan Jingquang's family. Bailey Hongzhuang only felt a burst of pain in her heart. She simply couldn't imagine the scene back then. The burning desire in her chest almost burned her to ashes. Chapter 1080. After Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing took you away, you were too young and your dantian was destroyed. This kind of injury was too serious for you to bear. Thus, Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing ran all over the place to save you. In the entire Shringxian continent, the Yu family is the most skilled in medicine. At that time, your parents could only swallow their anger and ask the Yu family for help when you were on the verge of death. With every sentence Di Beichen spoke, the unbearable feeling in his heart intensified. Compared to the treatment Bailey Hongzhuang received at the general's estate, Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing practically treated Bailey Hongzhuang as their lives. They clearly knew that the Yu family was involved in this matter, but for the sake of Bailey Hongzhuang, they were willing to throw away their dignity just so that Bailey Hongzhuang could live. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's clear eyes gradually became moist. Lan Yunxiao, what kind of proud man was he? He actually begged his enemies to lend a helping hand for her sake. From what the Yu family had done to her, it was clear how vicious they were. Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing had probably suffered all kinds of humiliation when they asked for help. The Yu family didn't agree. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly spoke, her low and cold voice filled with forbearance and resentment. This kind of result was almost certain. If the Yu family really wanted to treat her, they would have done so when they obtained the rainbow pearl. Why would they wait until later? Di Beichen nodded. The Yu family refused. Not only that, they began to hunt down your family to eliminate the root of the problem. You should know what happened after that. Bailey Hongzhuang lowered her eyes. Her long and curly eyelashes were like palm leaf fans, leaving a shadow on Bailey Hongzhuang's face. Her delicate face did not reveal any expression, but Di Beichen could feel the murderous aura emanating from Bailey Hongzhuang. It was a murderous aura that was so dense that it was shocking. Even he could not help but be moved when he sensed this murderous aura. From this, one could see how much Bailey Hongzhuang hated Lan Jingquang and the others. Bailey Hongzhuang understood that it was precisely because of the Yu clan's cultivators that Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing had been fleeing for their lives. In the end, they could only leave her at the entrance of the general's estate. Then, are my parents still alive? Bailey Hongzhuang's voice trembled. Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing had given up everything for her. Right now, what she wanted to know the most was whether they were still alive and whether they would have a chance to meet again. Di Beichen's face darkened. I'm not sure about that either. However, I got a clue that they might have been locked up by the Yu clan. The Yu clan? Bailey Hongzhuang furrowed her brows, a trace of worry on her face. If they've fallen into the Yu clan's hands, they will definitely eliminate them completely. Di Beichen shook his head slightly. According to the information I received, Lan Jingquang would occasionally visit the Yu clan. I think it's very likely that he went there to mock Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing. After all, he was suppressed by Lan Yunxiao for so many years. When he finally made a comeback, he would want to show off his achievement. How can you be so sure? Bailey Hongzhuang's brows were still tightly knitted. Although this was a possibility, it was not enough to confirm it. Chapter 1081. Following Di Beichen's words, Bailey Hongzhuang's expression changed. She immediately understood. So Lan Jingquang has been humiliating my parents all these years? Bailey Hongzhuang became even more furious. She didn't expect Lan Jingquang to be so despicable as to do such a thing. She could imagine that if Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing had fallen into Lan Jingquang's hands, Lan Jingquang would definitely humiliate and torture them in every possible way. This kind of despicable and treacherous fellow usually pretended to be kind, but behind the scenes, he did all sorts of evil things. It was obvious how sinister his heart was. Di Beichen hugged Bailey Hongzhuang tightly. He had been afraid that Bailey Hongzhuang wouldn't be able to accept the truth. No one would be able to accept this kind of thing in a short period of time, especially for children like them who thought they had been abandoned. When Bailey Hongzhuang found out that her parents had done so under such helpless circumstances, one could imagine the fluctuations in her heart. Wife, no matter what, at least this proves that your parents are still alive. Di Beichen's voice was gentle and carried a calming comfort. At this time, he couldn't do anything other than comfort her. Feeling Di Beichen's warm embrace, the agitated Bailey Hongzhuang calmed down a little. Di Beichen always had the power to make her feel at ease. That's right, you're right. At least they're still alive. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. This could be considered a fortune amidst misfortune. As long as they were still alive, they would be able to meet again one day. Beichen, do we have a way to save my parents? Bailey Hongzhuang looked up at Di Beichen. She couldn't accept the fact that Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing were suffering in the Yu clan. Every day of that kind of torture was torture, let alone the fact that they had been trapped in the Yu clan for so many years. Di Beichen placed his hands on Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulders, his obsidian-like eyes gazing at Bailey Hongzhuang. Wife, I will do my best. In reality, he had wanted to save Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing ever since he had confirmed this news. However, the Yu clan had done this in secret. Lan Jingquang naturally knew that if this matter was discovered, he would have to bear the consequences. Very serious. Therefore, he and the Yu clan had sealed the news very tightly. He had spent a tremendous amount of effort just to obtain this information. He had even used some of his secret connections and many people to invite him over. Under these circumstances, he had succeeded in understanding more. However, it was too difficult to save Lan Yunxiao and Lan and Mu Lingbing. Not only it was to find out where the Yu clans had. The Yu clan was an extraordinary clan in the entire Shengxian continent. One could imagine how powerful their defenses were. A clan with such a background would have a few powerful old fellows overseeing it. As long as there were even the slightest clues, it was very likely that they would be discovered. Not to mention saving them in this kind of situation. Although he wanted to save them, it wasn't easy to do so. The Yu clan's actions were too secretive. It would take some time to rescue them. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's heart sank. She also sobered up a little. Chapter 1082. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's mournful and desolate face, Di Beichen's heart ached. Ever since he had known Bailey Hongzhuang had always been strong. Nothing could defeat her. In Bailey Hongzhuang, he could always see a kind of strength that was unafraid and unafraid. No matter how difficult the trial was, she never knew what it meant to be discouraged, or what it meant to give up. He had only seen Bailey Hongzhuang's pale face due to her serious injuries, but even at that moment, Bailey Hongzhuang's lips could still blossom into a strong smile, like a winter plum, strong and unyielding. However, at this moment, he saw her frailty, pain and helplessness. After losing her strong appearance, after encountering such a situation, Bailey Hongzhuang's helplessness made his heart ache. She was only a 16-year-old girl, but she had to bear such a deep blood feud. Moreover, her enemies were the powerful Yu clan and Lan clan. He was so worried that Bailey Hongzhuang's small body wouldn't be able to take it. Di Beichen held Bailey Hongzhuang's hand tightly. My wife, you have to believe me. I will definitely save them. His deep and dignified eyes flashed with a resolute light. Di Beichen secretly swore in his heart that no matter what, he would definitely do it. Even if it was very difficult, so difficult that it was hard for him to do it, he believed that there would always be a way out. As long as they thought of a way, as long as the Yu clan really did it, then they would definitely be able to think of a way to save them. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly, looking at Di Beichen as if she was looking at her last life-saving straw. She was so powerless now. The time given to her was too short. She wasn't strong enough to face the Lan clan and Yu clan, those kind of colossal forces. Currently, she could only rely on Di Beichen's strength and rely on him to save her parents. I believe in you. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. She knew too many things today, making it hard for her to bear. Her entire mind was in a mess. My wife, maybe the situation isn't as bad as we think. Your parents have been trapped in the Yu clan for so long, but they have been persevering all this time. This proves that they still have hope in their hearts. Moreover, other than going to the Yu clan a little enthusiastically, Lan Jingquang has been going there less and less. After all, he has been flaunting his strength for so long. He doesn't need to prove everything to your parents. Now your parents should have a chance. As long as you give us a little more time, we will definitely be able to do it. No matter what, Hong Yu's, no matter what, he had to help her reunites to Yu family. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. She also understood the meaning of Di Beichen. Now that 15 years had passed, she believed that Lan Jingquang and Yu Manlan had shifted their attention to other places and relaxed their watch over her parent. She believed that although Lan Yunxiao and Yu Manlan had lost their freedom, they wouldn't suffer too much during this period. We still have time. They will definitely wait for us to save them. Di Beichen emphasized. He wanted to pass on his strength to Bailey Hongzhuang. My wife, you are their hope. Don't be discouraged. Chapter 1083. Bailey Hongzhuang stared at Di Beichen. She could feel the power that Di Beichen was transmitting to her. She nodded heavily. I understand. Her originally dark phoenix eyes were once again filled with a resplendent and resolute light. I will definitely take back everything that belongs to me with my own hands. She, Bailey Hongzhuang, had never had the habit of letting her things fall into the hands of others. Now that she knew everything, she was going to take it all back. Those fellows who stole her family's things and were still immensely pleased with themselves, she would personally let them taste the taste of pain. She wouldn't fall, and she couldn't fall. Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing had given up everything for her, endured humiliation, and abandoned their dignity just so that she could live on. And now, it was time for her to work hard for her parents. Di Beichen looked at Bailey Hongzhuang's small face brimming with stubbornness, and his nervous heart quietly relaxed a little. At least, Hongzhuang wasn't crushed by this enormous pressure. Pressure was often a good thing for cultivators. Only with pressure would there be motivation, and pressure was often the motivation for cultivators to move forward. The only difference was that the pressure was too great and too heavy. He thought about it for a long time before he told Hongzhuang about the cause and effect of the situation. He was worried that once Hongzhuang couldn't bear this pressure, she would completely collapse and never be able to recover from this setback. Cultivators like this could be found everywhere, and he had seen too many cultivators with weak wills. Similarly, once Bailey Hongzhuang could bear this pressure, she would become different. Her will would become even more tenacious, and no one would be able to destroy it. Fortunately, Hongzhuang had passed this hurdle, just as he had guessed. However, Hongzhuang's determination at that moment made his heart ache. Di Beichen hugged Bailey Hongzhuang again, his low and resolute voice ringing out from Bailey Hongzhuang's side. No matter what, I will always be by your side. He would always be by Hongzhuang's side and wouldn't let her bear this alone. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Di Beichen was the only person she could rely on now. Fortunately, he was by her side. Otherwise, it would be even more difficult for her to do this. You're tired. Have a good rest. Di Beichen said with concern as he looked at Bailey Hongzhuang's pale face. Have a good rest first. As for these things, you can think about them tomorrow. Di Baichen held Bailey Hongzhuang's little hand and was about to return to the room when he realized that his hand was wet. Upon closer inspection, Di Baichen realized that his hand was wet with blood. Di Baichen couldn't help but be startled when he realized this. He immediately grabbed Bailey Hongzhuang's little hand, only to realize that her fair and tender little hand was already covered in blood, and there were deep crescent-shaped scars on her palm. Di Baichen finally understood that Bailey Hongzhuang was using this method to vent her stress. Does it hurt? Di Baichen spread out Bailey Hongzhuang's little hand. Seeing her so sad, he felt as if a knife was being twisted in his heart. You can't control what happened back then. Don't punish yourself with other people's mistakes. They will definitely be punished. Bailey Hongzhuang didn't answer. She understood the meaning of Di Baichen's words, but it wasn't so easy to face it calmly. She needed time to calm down. As long as she was given some time to think, she would face it with strength. Chapter 1084. Di Baichen knew that Bailey Hongzhuang didn't want to talk, so he didn't force her. He immediately pulled Bailey Hongzhuang to sit at the side, and carefully and meticulously treated Bailey Hongzhuang's wound. After cleaning the bloodstains, Di Baichen saw how deep the wound was, and how much strength Bailey Hongzhuang had used to pinch it. However, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't even frown from the beginning to the end, so he only noticed Bailey Hongzhuang's expression, and didn't notice her hands. After Di Baichen bandaged Bailey Hongzhuang's wound, he couldn't help but ask with concern, "Wife, you should rest in my room tonight." He was really worried about Bailey Hongzhuang when she was like this, and he only wanted to watch over her tonight. However, Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head. "Baichen, don't worry, I'm fine. My mind is a little messy, and I want to calm down by myself." Hearing this, Di Baichen carefully sized up Bailey Hongzhuang's expression. When he saw that Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was natural, and there wasn't any problem, he nodded and said, "All right, then you should have a good rest tonight." Di Baichen accompanied Bailey Hongzhuang out of the room, and the three beasts outside the door quickly hid after hearing their movements. Previously, they had been outside the door thinking of a way to get in. After all, they couldn't let their master leave them behind just like that. After hearing what Di Baichen had to say, they fell into silence as they were thinking of ways to deal with the situation outside the house. Previously, they were very curious about their master's background, but no one would have thought that so many things had happened that year, and that their master's life had been completely rewritten. Xiao He and Xiao Bai knew that Bailey Hongzhuang had transmigrated from her previous life, but after obtaining the memories of this life's Bailey Hongzhuang, these two lives had become one, and there was no distinction between them. Their master had already died in her previous life, and she was now the continuation of Bailey Hongzhuang in this life. Therefore, everything that happened to Bailey Hongzhuang in this life was equivalent to their master's matters. This kind of background was really hard to accept. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang enter the room and watching the door close, Di Baichen stood at the door for a long time, and only returned to the room after hearing that there was no movement inside. Some things could only be understood if the person involved had thought it through. He knew that Bailey Hongzhuang would be able to face everything calmly, but to suddenly know so many things, her feelings must be very complicated, and she would need time to sort them out. He believed that when he saw Bailey Hongzhuang tomorrow, Bailey Hongzhuang would pull herself together. His wife was always so strong. After Di Baichen entered the house, the three beasts gathered together, but at this moment, the faces of the three beasts were flashing with anger. "Damn Lan Jingquang's family, their methods are too despicable." Little Black's face was filled with resentment. Just by listening from outside the door, he wanted to tear that family apart and skin them alive. The Yu family will die a horrible death, and they still want to be a medical family? Their actions are so despicable. Where is the benevolence of a doctor? Baisher's eyes were burning with anger. This kind of family should simply disappear from Shengxian continent. The Lan family is also not good people. After such a thing happened, they still protect Lan Jingquang's family. I'm so angry. Chapter 1085. The three beasties understood that what disappointed Lan Yunxiao the most wasn't Lan Jingquang or the Yu clan, but the Lan clan's attitude. He used to think that everyone in his family supported him, but after such a thing happened, he felt as if he had been betrayed by everyone. Just imagining this feeling of anger and heartache was unbearable, let alone Lan Yunxiao himself. Just like how their master felt, their consolation was useless. Only Bailey Hongzhuang could bear it. After learning about the penguins, the three beasties put away their playful attitude. Before this, they didn't have any sense of urgency. Their only enemy was Han Shiling, and they believed that their master would have no problem dealing with Han Shiling. Thus, they had been very relaxed during this period of time. Now that they knew that their master still had a blood feud, they felt a sense of nervousness. They didn't have time to continue fooling around. They had to become stronger with their master. Xiao He, Xiao Bai, and Baisher looked at each other. They all understood what they were thinking. Clearly, they had the same idea. Let's go in and accompany master first. Be quiet and don't disturb her. Xiao Hei's eyes flickered with worry. At this time, they were really worried about leaving their master alone. They didn't want to disturb her and only wanted to accompany her quietly. This way they could be at ease. Okay. Xiao Bai and Baisher nodded. The three beasties immediately tiptoed into the room. Bailey Hongzhuang lay on the bed, her gaze landing on the ceiling. She couldn't sleep. This matter had given her too much shock. Now that she thought about it carefully, she had two opponents, the Yu clan and the Lan clan. The Yu clan naturally didn't need to be mentioned. The reason why she and her parents had fallen to such a state was because of the Yu clan. If they hadn't relied on their superior medical skills, Lan Jingquang and Yu Manlan wouldn't have dared to do this, because they had no way of extricating themselves. This so-called medical aristocratic family was truly vicious. Her ink-black phoenix eyes were filled with extreme hatred. When she thought about how her parents had abandoned their pride and begged the Yu clan for her, how the Yu clan had humiliated and killed them in every possible way, her hatred towards the Yu clan had reached its peak. More than 10 years had passed, and the Yu clan was still enjoying a great reputation in the Shengxian continent. However, she would personally end all of this for the Yu clan, because they were not worthy. As for the Lan family, from the moment the Lan family chose to abandon their family, their original feelings were already gone. She didn't believe that the Lan family didn't know about the Yu family's pursuit of Lan Yunxiao. However, they hadn't done anything for so many years. Just from this point alone, it could be concluded that there was no longer any affection between them. As the head of an aristocratic family in her previous life, Bailey Hongzhuang knew very well that this was a common occurrence among aristocratic families. A cultivator who had lost his future, no matter how glorious he was in the past, would not be of any use in the future. For a clan, people with strength were the most important. Although many people could understand the situation of these aristocratic families, it was still somewhat lacking in humanity. If Lan Yunxiao didn't come from such a powerful cultivation family, the situation might have been different. Chapter 1086. Bailey Hongzhuang's mind was filled with thoughts. She was very clear on how powerful a cultivation aristocratic family was. If she wanted to overthrow them, she would have to have the ability to contend against them. This was undoubtedly difficult for the current her, but as long as she had the heart to do it, everything was possible. Even if there were countless dangers in front of her, she would ride the wind and break through all of them. Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's current situation was extremely bad, but it was impossible for her to save them in a short period of time. Di Beichen would help her think of a way. She also understood that even with Di Beichen's ability, it wouldn't be easy for him to accomplish all of this. After all, although Di Beichen was the young master of Tiangang sect, he wasn't the true sect master yet. Tiangang sect was on the same level as the Yu and Lan families. The Yu and Lan families were connected by marriage and stood on the same side. It was easy to imagine how difficult it would be for Di Beichen to accomplish this. Bailey Hongzhuang sighed faintly, but her eyes became increasingly resolute and bright. Now that things had reached this point, she had no other choice. She could only follow the most suitable path and walk down it step by step. She only hoped that her parents would be able to wait until the day she rescued them. While Bailey Hongzhuang was pondering, Di Beichen didn't rest. He understood that Hongzhuang was most concerned about her parents' safety. As long as they could save the two, then Hongzhuang would be much more at ease. As for the matter of revenge, they still had time to do it. But the matter of rescuing Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing had to be done as soon as possible. He would think of a way to save them. No matter what method it was, as long as it could be done, it would be the best result. The next day, Bailey Hongzhuang woke up early. With the current situation, she had no reason to slack off. She had to pull herself together and become stronger as quickly as possible. When Di Beichen saw Bailey Hongzhuang, he saw that Bailey Hongzhuang was in high spirits. A trace of joy flashed through his eyes. "Wife," Di Beichen called out softly. Last night, he had been worried about Hongzhuang. Fortunately, the situation was as he expected. Hongzhuang was like a bright little sun, always strong and full of strength. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Her calm demeanor was the same as before, as if nothing had happened. "Beichen, I've decided to try the Blood Chi Tower again today. If I still don't succeed, we'll leave. What do you think?" Bailey Hongzhuang's ink-black phoenix eyes flashed with determination and confidence. She had already made up her mind. No matter what, she must obtain the inheritance of the Blood Chi Tower. Right now, she had no time to waste. She had to do her best. Only by increasing her strength would she be able to rescue her parents sooner. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's determined and resolute look, Di Beichen's deep starry eyes revealed a complicated look. He then nodded, "All right." Although the selection competition was urgent and he had delayed it for quite some time, he still hoped to accomplish what he wanted to do. Hearing Di Beichen's reply, Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a smile. "Then I'll go to the Blood Chi Tower first. I'll wait for you to come back." Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's back as she left, Di Beichen knew that Bailey Hongzhuang was not feeling well either. She was just stubbornly refusing to show it on her face. Chapter 1087. Tiangang Sect. Big Brother D has been away from the sect for so long. We're still waiting for him to discuss the selection, but he hasn't returned yet. Han Xiling furrowed her brows. Her delicate and pretty face was filled with displeasure and dissatisfaction. She had not paid much attention when Di Beichen had gone to Feng Bo country. Based on Big Brother D's personality, it was impossible for him to take a fancy to anyone. The first 3 years had been peaceful. Who would have thought that Bailey Hongzhuang would suddenly appear and the two of them would get married? Ever since Bailey Hongzhuang had appeared, the situation had changed completely. Big Brother D had never been close to any woman, but he had told everyone that Bailey Hongzhuang was his wife. Initially, she had not paid much attention to Bailey Hongzhuang. She had only thought that Big Brother D had been lonely in Feng Bo country for too long and was now so close to a woman. As long as Big Brother D returned to Tiangang Sect, he would completely forget about Bailey Hongzhuang. However, ever since she had seen Bailey Hongzhuang with her own eyes, she had felt an indescribable sense of threat. As the proud daughter of Tiangang Sect, she had always been an idol in the hearts of women and the target of men's pursuit. She had never felt that she could not compare to anyone. However, Bailey Hongzhuang's outstanding appearance was simply stunning. For the first time, a sense of jealousy rose in her heart. That kind of appearance was enough to make any woman jealous. The most unacceptable thing was that she had been humiliated in front of Bailey Hongzhuang. Ever since she had been born, she had never been so humiliated. She had actually been taught a lesson by the master of the ruins in front of so many people. It could be said that it was a shame that she could not erase. Huang Fu Hui and the others were not ordinary people either. Following their return, this news had gradually spread to other people's ears. This clearly had a significant impact on her reputation. Fortunately, this matter had not spread very widely. Ever since she had returned, she had been thinking of ways to find Big Brother D. Later on, when Big Brother D had finally returned, she had wanted to use this opportunity to cut off all contact between Big Brother D and Bailey Hongzhuang. Who would have thought that after Big Brother D returned, he would focus on handling matters and treat her even more coldly than before? In fact, she had always understood that although many people in the outside world said that she and Big Brother D were a couple, Big Brother D did not open his heart to her. However, she was not worried. This was because, other than her, other women did not even have the chance to get close to Big Brother D. She had always believed that as long as she was given some time, Brother D would fall in love with her sooner or later. However, it seemed like it was too late now. Last time, Big Brother D couldn't wait to leave Tiangang sect after dealing with the sect's affairs. Even her persuasion to stay was useless. His absence lasted for several months. Obviously, Big Brother D had gone to look for Bailey Hongzhuang. As soon as she felt that Bailey Hongzhuang was a threat, she sent people to deal with Bailey Hongzhuang. Who would have thought that Bailey Hongzhuang would be so lucky to be able to escape under such circumstances? She was extremely disappointed. Most importantly, she did not know what kind of bewitching potion Bailey Hongzhuang had given Big Brother D to make him give his entire heart to her. In the past, Big Brother D had never said anything harsh to her. This time, he had laid his cards on the table for Bailey Hongzhuang. Although Big Brother D did not say it personally, He Mu had always only listened to Big Brother D. Chapter 1088. Young Mistress, who exactly is Bailey Hongzhuang? Tao Tsongrong's eyes flashed with disbelief. She had been by Han Shiling's side since she was young. Her relationship with Han Shiling was just like the relationship between He Mu and Di Beichen. I just don't understand. A woman from a remote dynasty can actually make young Master D do such a crazy thing. It's really unbelievable. Tao Tsongrong could not believe it. Di Beichen was the dream lover of all the female cultivators in Tiangang sect. There were definitely many outstanding female cultivators in Tiangang sect, but Di Beichen had never been moved for so many years. Why did the situation change after he went out this time? She had always thought that young mistress was the best match for Nose Drop Chin. Hearing this, Han Shiling's mouth evoked a mocking smile. What else can that woman do besides seducing D Dage with some foxy means? She did not believe that it was Big Brother D who fell in love with Bailey Hongzhuang first. It must be Bailey Hongzhuang who tried every possible way to seduce Di Beichen. Tao Tsongrong opened her mouth wide and her eyes were filled with disbelief. That Bailey Hongzhuang is actually so despicable. She's really despicable. She's not a good person to begin with. She thought that after hooking up with Big Brother D, she would have a meteoric rise. She didn't even check if she had the ability to fly up the branch and become a phoenix. Han Shiling's eyes were slightly cold. Ever since Bailey Hongzhuang appeared, her relationship with Big Brother D was no longer the same as before. Last time, she had made a strange move. As long as Bailey Hongzhuang dared to come back with Big Brother D this time, she would definitely make Bailey Hongzhuang inconspicuous in Tiangang sect. She did not believe that Bailey Hongzhuang would still have the face to continue staying here when all the elders accused Big Brother D of favoritism. Even if Bailey Hongzhuang was thick-skinned enough to stay here, she would become the target of ridicule of all the cultivators in Tiangang sect. If Big Brother D protected her, it would only make everyone hate her even more. She was destined to pay the price for stepping into a place that did not belong to her without sufficient reason. Young mistress, we must not let Bailey Hongzhuang have her way. Tao Tsongrong's face was filled with anger. Originally, she thought that the woman that young Master D had taken a fancy to was extraordinary. She didn't expect that it was such a despicable and seductive woman. This kind of woman wasn't qualified to compete with young Miss for young Master D. That's natural. Han Shiling sneered. She can't beat me. Tao Tsongrong chuckled. She knew very well what kind of person her young miss was. All women would feel ashamed of their inferiority when they saw young Mississippi. Although Bailey Hongzhuang had used such despicable means to temporarily win young Master D's heart, she believed that it would not be long before young Master D understood who the real Phoenix was. Tsongrong, go and tell grandfather to urge Big Brother D. After all, the selection competition is about to begin. The other sects are all waiting for Big Brother D. Han Shiling's expression was calm. She had plenty of ways to get D. Baichen away from Bailey Hongzhuang. Tao Tsongrong immediately understood and smiled. Don't worry, young mistress. I'll go and tell Great Elder immediately. After Tao Tsongrong left, a smug smile appeared on Han Shiling's cold and moving face. Bailey Hongzhuang had never been her opponent. Chapter 1089. Bailey Hongzhuang arrived at the Blood Chi Tower again. The cultivators in the Blood Chi Tower were very indifferent when they saw Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang had been coming to the Blood Chi Tower every day to try to pass the trial. Currently, no one knew which level Bailey Hongzhuang had reached. They only knew that Bailey Hongzhuang was above level 3. After all, no matter how high the trial was, they could not pass it themselves. Naturally, they would not know Bailey Hongzhuang's results. Bailey Hongzhuang is really persistent. She has been trying to pass the trial here for a few months, and she is still so tenacious. Just this perseverance alone is enough to make people gasp in admiration. In my opinion, she is blind. Does she really think that the inheritance of the Blood Chi Tower is so easy to obtain? If it was so easy, there would be more than a few people in the history of the Blood Chi Tower. In recent years, only a man named D. Baichen obtained the inheritance a few years ago. At that time it was shocking. Because of D. Baichen's success, more and more cultivators have been trying to obtain the inheritance in recent years. Everyone looked at Bailey Hongzhuang walking to the higher levels without saying a word. They could not help but sigh with admiration, but they could not help but feel envious. This was because Bailey Hongzhuang's current performance was indeed amazing. Bailey Hongzhuang went directly to the 9th level of the Blood Chi Tower. She decided to give it a try today. No matter what the final result was, she could not delay D. Baichen's important matters. She wanted to let D. Baichen leave first, while she stayed in the Bloodground Abyss for a while. However, the selection competition was about to begin. Even if she stayed here, she could not stay for long. Moreover, D. Baichen would definitely be worried about her if she stayed in the Bloodground Abyss. Therefore, she did not mention this idea. There was only one room on the 9th floor of the Blood Chi Tower. However, Bailey Hongzhuang felt extremely helpless about the test on the 9th floor. Because this was simply an unsolvable trap. When Bailey Hongzhuang walked in, an identical Bailey Hongzhuang appeared in front of her. The same clothes, the same appearance, the same outfit, and even the same application. The person in front of him was exactly the same Bailey Hongzhuang. Not only that, he even had the colored glass sword, and it was exactly the same in terms of power and nature. He even had the chaos ring on her hand. After these few days of testing, Bailey Hongzhuang discovered that the other party knew all the martial skills that she knew. No matter when and where, their actions were exactly the same. If he wanted to kill the other party, he would have to die. During this period of time, Bailey Hongzhuang had been racking her brains. Even if the opponent was an orange or yellow level opponent, she would not be so helpless. This was because there was at least a chance of winning. It was too difficult to defeat an identical version of herself. Bailey Hongzhuang quietly looked at the identical version of herself. For the first time, she had the urge to kill herself. The Bailey Hongzhuang opposite her did not move. They were like mirror images. They were exactly the same. Bailey Hongzhuang did not attack. This was because she had tried all kinds of attacks. Even if she was beaten black and blue, and the other party was also beaten black and blue, she could not kill herself. Chapter 1090. A proud and complacent voice rang out from Bailey Hongzhuang's mouth. Her mocking look was as if she had already determined the outcome. However, in the face of her opponent's provocation, Bailey Hongzhuang was incomparably calm. Even though the Blood Chi Tower had imitated her appearance, it could not imitate her personality. Based on her opponent's tone of voice alone, she could tell that they were different. However, just as her opponent had said, she had not found a way to defeat her opponent. Bailey Hongzhuang immediately sat down at the thought of this. She had used all kinds of attack methods before. Both parties would have to endure the same amount of power. Even her opponent's way of dodging and battle experience would be exactly the same as hers. She had even tried to severely injure herself before letting her opponent die first. However, it was to no avail. What kind of method can I use to defeat you? Bailey Hongzhuang furrowed her willowy brows. Heaven never bars one's way. She believed that since the Blood Chi Tower had set up this trial, there must be a way to solve it. However, she had not found a way to solve it yet. In the end, what part of his body was different from the Bailey Hongzhuang in front of him? Bailey Hongzhuang continued to ponder. Countless methods surfaced in her mind, but she dismissed them all. Over the past few days, she had thought of almost every method, but she could not think of a single one. Suddenly, Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze fell upon the chaos ring. Her pitch-black phoenix-like eyes suddenly lit up. Come to think of it, the most mysterious item on her body was the chaos ring. She did not know what the chaos ring was used for. However, up until now, everything in the chaos ring had shocked her. At the same time, it was also one of her greatest weapons. Then, Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze fell upon the identical Bailey Hongzhuang. The other party was also wearing a chaos ring. However, she did not believe that the Blood Chi Tower would be so heaven-defying that it would allow her opponent to have an identical chaos ring. Although she didn't know much about the chaos ring, she knew that it wasn't a simple ring. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to call it a divine artifact. Such an item couldn't be easily imitated. Thinking of this, Bailey Hongzhuang also had the idea of giving it a try. Her mind moved, and her soul entered the chaos ring. Since coming to the Bloodground Abyss, the number of times she entered the Ring of Chaos had undoubtedly decreased greatly. This was because the practice in the Bloodground Abyss had been of great help to her cultivation. During this time, she had been focusing on improving her cultivation. Naturally, she had also practiced her inscription technique, but the frequency had decreased by a bit. The trial of the Blood Chi Tower had filled her with fighting spirit. Bailey Hongzhuang walked into the Black and White Palace. To her, the Chaos Ring was the only way to defeat the fake Bailey Hongzhuang. Since the other party's situation was exactly the same as hers, then when her spiritual consciousness entered the Chaos Ring, that Bailey Hongzhuang's spiritual consciousness would also disappear. In this way, when she went out again, the other party would be a dead person. However, if she was wrong and the other party's Chaos Ring had the exact same effect, then she could only think of other ways. Chapter 1091. However, while Bailey Hongzhuang was practicing the inscription technique, the entire Blood Chi Tower was in an uproar. A bright and resplendent golden light illuminated the entire Blood Chi Tower. Under this light, the blood-red Blood Chi Tower gave off a sense of holiness and grandeur. When this light appeared, all the cultivators in the Bloodground Abyss focused their attention on the Blood Chi Tower. To many cultivators, this ray of light was extremely unfamiliar, but many of them could search for the origin of this ray of light in their minds. This light seems to be the light that appears after someone obtains the inheritance of the Blood Chi Tower. Yes, I've seen it once a few years ago. It appeared after Di Baichen passed all the trials of the Blood Chi Tower. I didn't expect it to appear again. Who actually passed the trial? For a moment, all the cultivators in the Bloodground Abyss gathered outside the Blood Chi Tower. Looking at the bright light, they were extremely shocked. It can't be Bailey Hongzhuang, right? It was unknown which cultivator mentioned it, but the eyes of all the cultivators present changed. During this period of time, they all knew that Bailey Hongzhuang had been challenging the trials. However, none of them dared to imagine that Bailey Hongzhuang could reach this step. This was too heaven-defying. It can't be. Although Bailey Hongzhuang's strength is good, how difficult is the trial of the Blood Chi Tower? I don't think she can do it. Who else could it be other than her? Everyone fell into silence. There were many cultivators who challenged the Blood Chi Tower trial. Not to mention passing the 9th floor, it was extremely difficult to pass the 6th floor. Other than Bailey Hongzhuang, they felt that it was even more impossible for other cultivators to succeed. After seeing the changes in the Blood Chi Tower, He Mu's handsome face was filled with joy. "Young master, madam succeeded." He Mu's voice was filled with unconcealable excitement. Although he knew that the young master had always been confident in the madam, he also knew how difficult it was to break through the trial of the Blood Chi Tower. Back then, when the young master had passed this trial, it had caused everyone to exclaim in surprise. It had been many years since anyone had succeeded. However, the young madam had also succeeded. Just this point alone was enough to prove young madam's talent and ability. If this news were to spread, Miss Han would no longer be able to say that young madam was not talented enough. He had been by the young master's side for so many years and had a certain understanding of Miss Han's arrogant personality. He was certain that Miss Han must have thought of the young madam this way. As long as the young mistress obtained the inheritance of the Blood Chi Tower, this alone would be enough to shut the mouths of many people. As the young master's secret guard, he sincerely hoped that the young master could be happy. Naturally, he also hoped that the marriage between the young master and the young master's wife would not be opposed and discussed by them. Di Baichen stood in front of the window as his gaze fell upon the resplendent Blood Chi Tower. His peerlessly handsome face revealed a joyful smile. His thin and elegant lips curled into a joyful and admiring curve. He never thought that Hongzhuang would be able to pass the trial so quickly. A few days ago, Hongzhuang had been having a headache over the last stage. He never thought that she would be able to complete it on the last day. It was truly a pleasant surprise. Chapter 1092. When Bailey Hongzhuang emerged from the Chaos Ring, she realized that Bailey Hongzhuang had disappeared. When she saw this, Bailey Hongzhuang's phoenix-like eyes were filled with astonishment. She then smiled in understanding. It seems that her guess was right. The Blood Chi Tower was unable to simulate the effects of the Chaos Ring. Bailey Hongzhuang looked around. Since she had passed the final test, she wondered where the inheritance of the Blood Chi Tower was located. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang was thinking about how to obtain the inheritance, a blood-red ball of light suddenly appeared in the middle of the hall. The blood-red ball of light was mixed with specks of golden light. It was dazzling and bright, faintly emitting a heart-palpitating aura. Bailey Hongzhuang's ink-black phoenix-like eyes flickered with a bright light. She slowly approached the ball of light. Obviously, this ball of light should be the inheritance of the Blood Chi Tower. Bailey Hongzhuang reached out her hand towards the ball of light. The moment her slender fingers touched the ball of light, Bailey Hongzhuang felt a piercing pain. Immediately after that, a tyrannical energy flowed continuously from her fingertips into her body. Under this tyrannical energy, Bailey Hongzhuang hurriedly activated the demon summoning scripture. If she did not activate the technique, she might explode and die under the infusion of this energy. After Bailey Hongzhuang had completely absorbed the blood-red ball of light, Bailey Hongzhuang sat down and clasped her hands together as she continuously activated the technique. As Bailey Hongzhuang continued to activate the technique, her aura gradually increased. The cultivators in the Blood Chi Tower kept looking at the stairs. They just wanted to know who the cultivator who had obtained the inheritance was. The inheritance of the Blood Chi Tower could be said to be a once-in-a-century occurrence. However, in just a few years, 2 cultivators had obtained the inheritance. It was truly shocking. What they were most curious about was how this cultivator managed to break through the trial. Everyone knew that the trials of the Blood Chi Tower were abnormal. The difficulty increased every 3 floors, and in the end, they didn't even have any hope of breaking through. If it was because they were not strong enough, it would be fine. However, the cultivators who passed the trial of the Blood Chi Tower were also in the Red Realm. Despite being at the same level of cultivation, the other party was able to pass while they were unable to do so. This was what was truly difficult to accept. No matter who the cultivator who obtained the inheritance was, he or she would become famous in the Bloodground Abyss. Inside the inn, young master, young madam has successfully broken through the 9th level of the trial. Should we go and receive young madam? Blackwood raised his head and looked at D. Bachin. Originally, the young master had insisted on staying in the Bloodground Abyss for the sake of the young master's wife's inheritance. Now that the young madam had successfully obtained the inheritance, the young master could finally let go of the things that he had been worried about. D. Bachin shook his head slightly. Hong Zhuang has indeed passed the trial, but she still needs some time to obtain the inheritance. Let's wait. He had obtained the inheritance of the Blood Chi Tower before, so he knew that the inheritance also needed some time. He knew about the selection competition. Although the day of the selection competition was approaching, it wasn't as urgent as the Tiangang sect. Come to think of it, Han Shieling had something to do with it. He knew Hong Zhuang's temperament very well. She had always been someone who would not attack unless she was attacked. Chapter 1093. Hearing this, Heimu nodded slightly. He had not passed the trial of the Blood Chi Tower, and did not know about this. The last time the young master had obtained the inheritance, he was on the 6th level of the trial. At that time, the old sect master had led them. Now that he had surpassed the Red Realm, it was obviously impossible for him to obtain the inheritance of the Blood Chi Tower. When Bailey Hongzhuang opened her eyes and exited her cultivation state, anyone who was in front of her would notice that her ink-black phoenix eyes had unknowingly turned blood-red. However, the blood-red color only appeared for a short moment and soon returned to its original black color. Bailey Hongzhuang's delicate and beautiful face was filled with a trace of emotion. Even after obtaining the Blood Chi field, she could not help but feel amazed. The Blood Chi field was a very mysterious energy. It was like a coercion, but it contained a hint of blood and had a power that could erode one's mind. This situation was not much different from what she had imagined before. However, it could suppress the opponent's cultivation in battle and increase one's own strength. The Blood Chi Tower and the Blood Chi field are indeed magical. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a faint and moving smile. She felt a trace of relief in her heart. Fortunately, she had succeeded. If she had left this time, she did not know when she would be able to return here. She was already at the 8th level of the Red Realm. Once she participated in the selection contest, it was very likely that she would reach the Orange Realm. At that time, she would not have the opportunity to participate in the assessment. Thinking of this, Bailey Hongzhuang's smile gradually deepened. Many things were destined. After obtaining the inheritance, Bailey Hongzhuang did not stay any longer and immediately left the Blood Chi Tower. When Bailey Hongzhuang walked to the 3rd level of the Blood Chi Tower, almost all the cultivators' eyes fell on her. Look, Bailey Hongzhuang is out. In my opinion, the person who obtained the Blood Chi field must be her. Don't you feel that Bailey Hongzhuang's aura seems to have improved a lot? Don't worry. Once the inheritance is over, your name will appear on the Blood Aura Field's transfer pillar. Hearing everyone's discussion, Bailey Hongzhuang only glanced at them indifferently. Soon, all the cultivators in the Bloodground Abyss would know that she was the one who had obtained the Blood Aura inheritance. However, it didn't matter to her whether others knew or not. She and D. Bachin were about to leave the Bloodground Abyss. Not only on the 3rd floor of the Blood Chi Tower, But the performance of the cultivators on the second and first floors was also the same, or even more exaggerated. This was because they were cultivators who had not even passed the first 3 levels of the single elimination tournament. Bailey Hongzhuang had only been in the Blood Chi Tower for a few months, but she had already obtained the inheritance. In comparison, they had worked so hard for the inheritance of the Blood Chi Tower for so long, but it was all for naught. One could imagine the irony in their hearts. Bailey Hongzhuang walked out of the tower under everyone's gazes. It was as if she had suddenly become the most famous character in the Bloodground Abyss. Soon, everyone noticed that a golden name was slowly appearing on the Blood Chi Tower's transfer pillar. The name is about to appear. Everyone was excited and held their breath. They only wanted to know the final result. Chapter 1094. Even though everyone had already guessed that the practitioner who got the inheritance of the Blood Chi Tower was likely to be Bailey Hongzhuang, at this moment, when they knew that it was really Bailey Hongzhuang, their hearts couldn't help but tremble. My God, it's really Bailey Hongzhuang! What is the background of this Bailey Hongzhuang? How could she get the inheritance so easily? No matter what her background is, just the fact that she can get the inheritance has already proved that her strength is not simple. Some practitioners who were originally dissatisfied with Bailey Hongzhuang also dispelled their original evil thoughts after knowing Bailey Hongzhuang's achievement. Needless to say, Bailey Hongzhuang must be a very extraordinary person in the future. In the history of the Blood Chi Tower, all the practitioners who got the inheritance were extraordinary people. There was no doubt about this. After knowing that Bailey Hongzhuang actually got the inheritance of the Blood Chi Tower, Bloody Rose was deeply shocked in her heart. Originally, she only thought that Bailey Hongzhuang's strength was good, but she was still not worthy of Di Baichen. However, now, after knowing Bailey Hongzhuang's achievements, everything she originally clamored for became a joke. This woman's cultivation talent was so strong. At this moment, Bloody Rose was not only jealous that Bailey Hongzhuang could get Di Baichen's heart, but she was even more jealous that Bailey Hongzhuang could get such a result. This was just as Bailey Hongzhuang said before, she would rely on her own strength and did not need to rely on anyone. When Bailey Hongzhuang walked out of the Blood Chi Tower, she saw Di Baichen and He Mu standing at the door looking at her with a smile. The 3 beasts were also sitting on the shoulders of Di Baichen and He Mu. During this time, the 3 beasts and Di Baichen were also very familiar with each other. No matter who they sat on, they were very used to it. Wife, congratulations! Di Baichen's handsome face curved into a happy and enchanting smile as he reached out his right hand to grab Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Her smile was beautiful and bright. I told you that I can pass. Young mistress, you're really amazing. He Mu admires you. He Mu was not stingy with his praise. He was already full of admiration for the young mistress. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's beautiful cherry lips curled up slightly. Her eyes were bright and moving. He Mu is getting better at talking. He Mu smiled and scratched his head, feeling a little embarrassed. While Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 2 were talking, many cultivators were looking at them. After all, the fact that Bailey Hongzhuang had obtained the inheritance of the Blood Chi Tower was an explosive piece of news. Many cultivators wanted to know how Bailey Hongzhuang had broken through the trial. They had been trapped in the trial for many years. Di Baichen's deep gaze swept across the cultivators who were looking at them. He said, Wife, let's go back first. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. There were too many people here. It was indeed not a good place to talk. The 3 of them left quickly, and many cultivators' gazes were fixed on them. Feeling the gazes around her, Bailey Hongzhuang frowned slightly. The situation was clearly different from what she had imagined. Logically speaking, this inheritance could only be obtained by cultivators who passed. Even if other cultivators killed her, they would not be able to obtain this inheritance. They should not be following her closely. Chapter 1095. Wife, are you tired from the last round today? As they walked, Di Beichen's voice quietly entered Bailey Hongzhuang's ears. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head slightly. No, I'm in great shape right now. She had relied entirely on the chaos ring to pass the last round today. As for herself, she had not used any energy at all. Moreover, she was in great shape after receiving the legacy of the Blood Chi Tower. She could even be said to be full of energy. Then, how about we leave the Bloodground Abyss right now? Di Beichen's dark eyes flickered with a deep light. His handsome face was calm and composed. All right. Bailey Hongzhuang agreed without any hesitation. They had originally planned to leave after receiving the legacy of the Blood Chi Tower. Since they had already received it, there was no need for them to continue staying here. Moreover, judging from the cultivator's situation, if they continued to stay here, something might happen. It was better to leave as soon as possible. After receiving Bailey Hongzhuang's confirmation, Di Beichen and He Mu looked at each other. The situation was just as they had expected. Whenever a cultivator who received the legacy appeared, the Bloodground Abyss would not be peaceful. Back then, Di Beichen had not stayed in the Bloodground Abyss for long after receiving the legacy. He had directly left. The three of them walked out of the Bloodground Abyss. Many cultivators were stunned when they saw Bailey Hongzhuang and the others preparing to leave. Bailey Hongzhuang is preparing to leave the Bloodground Abyss? She's already successfully obtained the Blood Chi field. Why is she still staying here? If Bailey Hongzhuang leaves, won't we not know the trick to breaking through the trial? Many cultivators began to hesitate. Although they knew that everyone's trial was different, it was always good to know more. Perhaps they would encounter the same trial. However, when the crowd saw Di Beichen beside Bailey Hongzhuang, many of the cultivators who originally had evil intentions chose to give up. After all, Di Beichen's display in the Blood Chi Tower had intimidated many people. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two unhurriedly walked out of the Bloodground Abyss. He Mu had already prepared the horses according to Di Beichen's instructions. When they were about to reach the entrance of the Bloodland Abyss, Bailey Hongzhuang saw the horses that had been prepared not far away. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichen in astonishment. It seemed that Di Beichen had already expected such a situation. With a flip, the three of them immediately left on their horses. After the three of them successfully left the Bloodground Abyss, a joyful smile spread across Bailey Hongzhuang's calm face. Fortunately, no cultivators had attacked them until they left. We've finally left successfully. While she was walking, her heart was in her mouth. Once a cultivator attacked, it was very likely that it would be a group battle. Looking at the beautiful smile on Bailey Hongzhuang's face, Di Beichen's face softened a bit. This time, there were no cultivators who made a move. Our luck is not bad. He Mu looked at the young master and young mistress, who were made in heaven. He steered his horse slower and quietly followed behind the young master and young mistress. Chapter 1096. Yuanwu City. When Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen returned to Yuanwu City, Yuan Hongyang and Yuan Liqing warmly received Bailey Hongzhuang and Lu Qiu. Young Master Di, Miss Bailey, how did you feel in the Bloodground Abyss? Yuan Hongyang had a faint smile on his face, but there was a trace of admiration in his eyes as he looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and Lu Qiu. Long ago, he knew that Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang were not simple. However, he did not expect Di Beichen and Lu Qiu to stay in the Bloodground Abyss for such a long time. It was truly surprising. Not bad, Di Beichen said with a faint smile. Just as Big Brother Yuan said before, the Bloodground Abyss was very bloody and surprising. Bailey Hongzhuang's smile was faint and elegant. There was no need to talk about what happened in the Bloodground Abyss after leaving the Bloodground Abyss. It must have been very tiring for you in the Bloodground Abyss. Since you have returned to Yuanwu City, why don't you come to our Yuan clan to rest for a few days? Yuan Hongyang asked. Yuan Hongyang was very grateful to Bailey Hongzhuang and Lu Qiu. If not for the appearance of Bailey Hongzhuang and Lu Qiu, the Yuan clan would not have been able to suppress the Xie clan so easily. Now, after the Yuan clan's hard work, the Xie clan's arrogance had been completely suppressed by them. Not only that, the Xie clan's loss of a successor like Xie Qi was undoubtedly a huge blow. It had a significant impact on the Xie clan's reputation. While the Xie clan was in chaos, they took over some of the Xie clan's businesses. Regarding this, the Lu clan had always maintained a neutral attitude. As a result, their Yuan clan had become the #1 clan in Yuanwu City. All these years, they had always wanted to achieve this goal. However, the three clans had been at odds for too long and did not agree to break this situation. However, he did not expect that the two friends he had made along the way would help him complete all of this. It was like a pie falling from the sky. Therefore, Yuan Hongyang was very grateful to Di Baichen and Lu Qiu. "Thank you, Big Brother Yuan, for your kindness, but we have urgent matters to attend to, so we can't stay here for long." Bailey Hongzhuang declined politely. For Yuan Hongyang and the others, they were originally just acquaintances, they had met by chance, and it was fate to be able to come to this point. Hearing this, Yuan Hongyang suddenly understood. "So that's how it is. Then I will immediately arrange for the wyverns to depart for the Sky Swallow Kingdom." "Many thanks, Big Brother Yuan." Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Bailey Hongzhuang. And Hongzhuang didn't want Di to be labeled as someone addicted to love because of her. Because she missed and Chiuez were very much. Yuan Hongyang waved his hand. "If you want to thank someone, it should be the cultivators of my Yuan clan. Leave such a small matter to us. We will get it done quickly." Now, as the Yuan clan's weight in Yuanwu City became more and more important, the wyvern was completely under their control. Therefore, it was easy for him to help Di Baichen and Lu Qiu arrange for the wyvern to leave. Yuan Hongyang immediately went to arrange it, while Yuan Liqing stood beside Bailey Hongzhuang. Her pretty face revealed a bit of reluctance. "It was not easy to see you come back from the bloody ground abyss. I didn't expect you to return to Tianyin Kingdom so soon." Yuan Liqing sighed. "After you leave this time, I'm afraid we won't be able to see each other again." Chapter 1097. "I hope so." The corners of Yuan Liqing's mouth curled into a smile. However, the smile on her slightly desolate face did not reach the bottom of her heart. "In the future, I will probably go to the Bloodground Abyss again. At that time, I will definitely come to the Origin Martial City to see you." Her exquisite and beautiful face bloomed with a bright and beautiful smile. During this period of time in the Bloodground Abyss, she had improved a lot. Naturally, she would not miss such a place that was beneficial to improving her cultivation. Being able to obtain the inheritance of the Blood Qi Tower this time was already the best harvest for her. However, she was still very interested in the training ground behind the Bloodground Abyss. As long as she had the chance in the future, she would definitely come here again. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang was serious and did not seem to be comforting her, the smile on Yuan Liqing's face widened. "That's great. When the time comes, you must come and find me." Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. "Definitely." Yuan Liqing, whose mood had improved, carefully sized up Bailey Hongzhuang. With this look, her eyes could not help but be filled with surprise. "Hongzhuang, I feel that your aura has improved a lot." Yuan Liqing frowned slightly. Bailey Hongzhuang had only left the Origin Martial City for a few months, but when she saw Bailey Hongzhuang, the feeling was completely different. Although Bailey Hongzhuang was controlling her aura and she could not feel it clearly, she felt that Bailey Hongzhuang was much stronger than before. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. "I have indeed improved in the Bloodground Abyss this time. What's your cultivation now?" Yuan Liqing asked curiously. In the past, she was also filled with curiosity about the Bloodground Abyss. However, she could not accept such a bloody and dangerous place. There were enemies everywhere. The slightest carelessness could lead to a fatal disaster. In such a place, she could not even sleep in peace. Originally, she thought that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen were just going to take a look and would be back soon. Who would have thought that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen would actually stay in the Bloodground Abyss for such a long time? She was truly envious. Orange Level 1. Bailey Hongzhuang did not hide it. When she passed the first 8 floors of the Blood Qi Tower, her strength had already reached the 8th level of the Red Realm. After successfully breaking through the 9th level of the trial and obtaining the inheritance of the Blood Qi Tower, her cultivation level increased to Orange Level Rank 1. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Yuan Liqing couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. She looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in horror, clearly unable to believe what she had heard. Orange Level Rank 1? Yuan Liqing's eyes widened. You're leveling up too fast. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. The Bloodground Abyss is indeed a place that promotes one's cultivation level. Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but exclaim. She was also surprised by the speed of her cultivation level improvement. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's exclamation, Yuan Liqing had a guess in her mind. She knew what kind of place the Bloodground Abyss was. Presumably, Bailey Hongzhuang's cultivation level had been forced to improve in that environment. Looks like you guys have suffered a lot in the Bloodground Abyss. Yuan Liqing could not help but exclaim. What kind of pressure could allow one's cultivation level to improve so quickly? Chapter 1098. Not long after, Yuan Hongyang returned. Young Master D. Miss Bailey. Yuan Hongyang had a faint smile on his face. The flying beasts have already been arranged. You can set off whenever you want. Thank you, young Master Yuan. Di Beichen bowed. It's our duty. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen looked at each other. They did not plan to waste any more time in Yuanwu City. Since the flying beasts had already been arranged, they could set off now. Yuan Hongyang also knew that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen had urgent matters to attend to. He immediately headed towards the direction of the flying beasts with Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two. Soon, Bailey Hongzhuang, Di Beichen, and He Mu sat on the flying beasts together. Young Master D. Miss Bailey, take care. Yuan Hongyang stood below the flying beast and said. You guys take care too. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Hongzhuang, the next time you come to Yuanwu City, you must come to the Yuan clan to find me. Yuan Liqing waved her hand and said. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Definitely. The flying beasts quickly flew into the air and carried Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two as well as the 3 beasts towards Sky Swallow Kingdom. Only when the flying beasts gradually disappeared from their sight did Yuan Hongyang and Yuan Liqing retract their gazes. I didn't expect them to be able to stay in the Bloodground Abyss for so long. It's really unexpected. I wonder when He Mu went to find them. Yuan Hongyang's eyes were filled with emotion. Thinking back, his performance when he went to the Bloodground Abyss was terrible. He originally thought that Di Beichen and He Mu's performance would not be much better than his. He did not expect the two of them to be gone for so long. Hongyang, you don't know how terrifying Hongzhuang's improvement in the Bloodground Abyss was. Yuan Liqing pretended to be mysterious as she looked at Yuan Hongyang. Bailey Hongzhuang had scared her, so she wanted to scare Yuan Hongyang as well. Looking at Yuan Liqing's appearance, Yuan Hongyang was also very curious. The Bloodground Abyss can indeed help cultivators increase their cultivation. How much has Bailey Hongzhuang improved? She stayed in the Bloodground Abyss for a few months, so she should be able to reach the 5th level of the Red Realm, right? TSK. Yuan Liqing waved her hand. You're underestimating Hongzhuang. Yuan Hongyang's eyes narrowed. Could it be that he has advanced by 2 stages? Yuan Liqing shook her head and continued to look at Yuan Hongyang. 3rd stage? Yuan Hongyang was surprised. Isn't this promotion too fast? Raising 1 level in a month is impossible under normal circumstances. That's not right. Yuan Liqing said. Guess again. Yuan Hongyang frowned and looked at Yuan Liqing in disbelief. Don't tell me that Bailey Hongzhuang has advanced by 5 steps? It's the 7th stage. Yuan Liqing emphasized. Previously, Bailey Hongzhuang's cultivation was at the 3rd level of the Red Realm. Now that she was at the 1st level of the Orange Realm, wasn't that an advancement of 7 stages? Yuan Hongyang was stunned as soon as he heard this. He looked at Yuan Liqing in disbelief, as if he had heard something extremely unbelievable. 7th stage? Then Bailey Hongzhuang is at the 1st level of the Orange Realm? Yuan Liqing nodded affirmatively. That's right. Hongzhuang's cultivation is now at the 1st level of the Orange Realm. How is that possible? Yuan Hongyang furrowed his brows in disbelief. How did she improve so quickly? Chapter 1099. Looking at Yuan Hongyang's incredulous expression, the smile on Yuan Liqing's face widened. At least, she was not the only one who was shocked. The two of them walked towards the Yuan residence. Originally, they were very happy to see Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen and wanted to invite them to stay at the Yuan residence for a while. They did not expect Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen to leave so quickly after meeting them. It was really a pity. Suddenly, a figure appeared in front of Yuan Hongyang and Yuan Liqing. After seeing who it was, Yuan Hongyang and Yuan Liqing were surprised. "Big brother, why are you here?" Yuan Hongyang asked in surprise. The person who came was none other than the Yuan family head, Yuan Qingshua. When Yuan Qingshua saw that only Yuan Hongyang and Yuan Liqing were there, he could not help but ask, "Why are there only the two of you? Where are Miss Bailey and young Master D?" "They have urgent matters to attend to, so I arranged for the wyvern to send them away," Yuan Hongyang replied. "Big brother, why are you looking for them? They've left?" Yuan Qingshua was startled. Obviously, this answer was not what he expected. Yuan Liqing nodded slightly. However, from Yuan Qingshua's attitude, she could feel that the situation was not so simple. "Big brother, why are you looking for them in such a hurry? Did something happen?" Yuan Hongyang and Yuan Liqing looked at Yuan Qingshua curiously. Their big brother had always been steady, and it was rare to see him like this. "I just received news that Bailey Hongzhuang has obtained the inheritance of the Blood Qi Tower," Yuan Qingshua sighed. Yuan Qingshua sighed faintly. After hearing this news, he was completely stunned. How difficult was it to obtain the inheritance of the Blood Qi Tower? He did not expect Bailey Hongzhuang to obtain the inheritance in less than 3 months at the Bloodgrave Abyss. Her strength and talent were really amazing. When he thought of how they knew Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen, Yuan Qingshua could not help but feel excited. His younger brother had only met them by chance on the way here. If these friends were so capable, he could not miss this opportunity. He must build a good relationship with them. It was precisely because of this that he had immediately rushed out from his family to welcome Bailey Hongzhuang and Gu Ruoyun. He did not expect that they had already left. Hearing Yuan Qingshua's words, Yuan Hongyang and Yuan Liqing looked at each other in disbelief. "Big brother, what did you say?" Yuan Hongyang asked again in disbelief. "Bailey Hongzhuang has obtained the legacy of the Blood Qi Tower." Yuan Qingshua wasn't surprised by Yuan Hongyang's reaction. "You've met two incredible people this time. I was wondering how Bailey Hongzhuang managed to level up to Orange level rank 1 in such a short time. She must have passed the inheritance of the Blood Qi Tower," Yuan Liqing exclaimed. At this moment, Yuan Hongyang and Yuan Liqing understood. As it turned out, they didn't need to worry about whether or not Bailey Hongzhuang could adapt to the environment of the Bloodground Abyss. Not only did they adapt, they even made a name for themselves in the Bloodground Abyss. Not only that, Di Beichen is the cultivator who obtained the inheritance of the Blood Qi Tower a few years ago. Come to think of it, that's why Di Beichen brought Bailey Hongzhuang to the Bloodground Abyss. Yuan Qingshua's words were like a heavy bomb that smashed into Yuan Hongyang and Yuan Liqing's hearts. When they thought of how they had advised Bailey Hongzhuang and Gu Ruoyun about the dangers of the Bloodground Abyss, they felt that they were ridiculous. Chapter 1100. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen naturally didn't know how much shock their affairs had brought to Yuan Hongyang and others. They just rode the flying beast to resist the cold. Wifey, do you want to go back to Tiangang's sect with me this time? Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyes and looked at Di Beichen with a little doubt. I have to participate in the selection competition first before entering Tiangang's sect. They had already discussed it before. Before proving that she had enough qualifications to enter Tiangang's sect, she would not go. Whether it was for Di Beichen's reputation or for her own pride, she couldn't go through the back door. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's puzzled look, Di Beichen's lips evoked an evil and charming smile. I mean, you go to Tiangang's sect with me. The selection competition will start soon. I will let He Mu pass the news to Xia Jiqing and let them prepare to participate in the selection competition. You will go with me and enter the selection competition directly, saving the trouble of running back and forth. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyebrows wrinkled slightly. According to Di Beichen's words, it was not impossible. However, at this moment, she went back with Di Beichen. She was afraid that it would inevitably cause an uproar in Tiangang's sect. At least, Han Xiling would not stop. Wifey, this selection competition will not end in a short time. Don't you want to go to Tiangang's sect to announce your ownership? Di Beichen winked at Bailey Hongzhuang. For him, it was good to be able to stay with his wifey for a while. He understood that many disciples in the sect were full of curiosity about Hongzhuang, and there were many unpleasant remarks. However, the reason he brought Hongzhuang back this time was to tell everyone that no matter what other people thought, Hongzhuang was the woman he loved the most. With this opportunity, he could also let some people completely give up. Looking at Di Beichen's seductive appearance, Bailey Hongzhuang's smile gradually widened. Once such a devilishly handsome man tried to seduce you, that kind of charm was something that no ordinary woman could resist. All right. Bailey Hongzhuang did not mind going to Tiangang's sect to meet Han Xiling again. In the future, she would set foot in Tiangang's sect sooner or later, so it might not be a bad thing to go earlier. As for what Han Xiling might do, she would deal with whatever came her way. She would deal with it as it came. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang agreed to his proposal, Di Beichen was in a good mood. The last time I returned to Tiangang's sect, I already told everyone your identity. Everyone is very curious about you. However, there are good and bad things in this curiosity. After you go, don't worry about anything else. Just trust me. I will deal with all these problems. Di Beichen held Bailey Hongzhuang's hand tightly. He did not want Bailey Hongzhuang to suffer any grievances. However, he was forced to leave Tiangang's sect for 3 years. When he returned, he suddenly told everyone that he was married. Naturally, some people were dissatisfied. Among them, the most dissatisfied was the great elder. However, he would deal with these problems one by one. The first and most important thing was to let everyone believe in the existence of Hongzhuang. Only after proving this point, he could deal with other things. Chapter 1101. For Bailey Hongzhuang, other than the people she cared about, she didn't care about the words of others. After all, she had long been used to these discussions over the years. With Han Xiling's position in Tiangang's sect, the disciples of Tiangang's sect would certainly believe her words. When she went to Tiangang's sect, it was inevitable that she would hear some bad words. However, these wouldn't have any effect on her. Sooner or later, she would have to face this matter. It wasn't a bad idea to go to Tiangang's sect earlier to broaden her horizons. Soon, she would let Han Xiling know the taste of being slapped in the face. Looking at the confident radiance on Bailey Hongzhuang's delicate smiling face, Di Beichen tightened his grip on Bailey Hongzhuang's hand. Wife, I love you. Under such circumstances, he only wanted to say these 3 words to Bailey Hongzhuang. From the beginning, he was the one who liked Hongzhuang and pursued Hongzhuang. Now, Hongzhuang had to bear some unnecessary pressure because of him. In his heart, He felt very guilty towards Hong Zhuang. However, he would solve these problems as soon as possible. As soon as these words came out, Bailey Hong Zhuang's beautiful face suddenly flushed with a touch of crimson. Her clear and bright eyes were also moist and moving. He Mu quietly sat in a position far away from Bailey Hong Zhuang and Di Beichen. He was minding his own business and cultivating. See no evil, hear no evil. He still understood this situation. At this moment, the three beasts were also sitting in He Mu's arms. Originally, the three of them had been following their master around like third wheels. Now that He Mu had appeared, they were completely handed over to him by Di Beichen. Now, they couldn't even watch the show. As Bailey Hong Zhuang and the others got closer to Tian Yen Kingdom, they also found that the original cold had gradually dissipated. The cotton-padded clothes on their bodies were also put into their universe bag. Other than the snow origin country, which was a country of ice and snow, the other places would not make them feel so cold. Finally, under such a hurried journey, Bailey Hong Zhuang and the other two successfully arrived at the kingdom of Sky Swallow. Bailey Hong Zhuang was somewhat emotional when she came to Sky Swallow Kingdom again. Accustomed to the bloody scenes of the bloody ground abyss, he only felt that the kingdom of Sky Swallow was unusually peaceful. He Mu, go to Tsang Lan College first and tell this news to the cultivators in the special enrollment class. Then come back to Tiangang sect to find me. Di Beichen explained things to He Mu as they walked. The relationship between Bailey Hong Zhuang and Xia Jiqing was very good. Di Beichen was also very clear. It was precisely because of this that he specifically asked He Mu to inform Xia Jiqing and the others. Not all cultivators could participate in the selection competition. They had to pass some tests before they could participate. Young master, you mean to let Lady Xia and the rest go to Tiangang sect and participate in the selection after passing the Tiangang sect's test? He Mu asked. Usually, this selection competition was selected by the dynasty. Only the top cultivators in the dynasty had the possibility to participate in the selection competition. Now, many dynasties had begun to prepare for this selection. Sects also had places for assessment. It was just that the cultivators who passed the sect assessment and participated in the selection competition were equivalent to seeded players. Needless to say, the strength of the young master's wife naturally didn't need to be mentioned. However, the other students in the special enrollment class might not necessarily be able to pass the assessment. Di Beichen nodded. Yes, let them come together. Chapter 1102. Seeing that Di Beichen had already made his decision, He Mu no longer questioned it. He knew that the young master had always been very good to the young lady. Through this method, the young lady would be able to participate in the selection with familiar friends. Otherwise, those who participated in the selection would all be unfamiliar cultivators. Undoubtedly, cooperation would not be a small problem. Young master, I will immediately go to Azure Water School to inform Miss Xia and the others. You and the young lady should return to Tiangang sect first. He Mu said. Now, Tiangang sect had been urging the young master to return. If they did not return as soon as possible, the storm that the young lady would face would be even stronger. Di Beichen nodded slightly. Be careful on the way. He Mu no longer hesitated and immediately rode his horse in the direction of Azure Water School. After He Mu left, Di Beichen and Bailey Hong Zhuang did not stay for long and immediately rushed to Tiangang sect. Azure Water School. Ren Tianxiong and Huan Chuyu had already informed all the students about the selection competition. This once every 5 years selection competition was an extremely good opportunity for cultivators to become a carp leaping over the dragon gate. Once they had a good performance in the selection, they would be able to step into the clouds and truly enter the top forces of Xingxian continent. If they missed this opportunity, they would have to wait for another 5 years. The cultivators of Azure Water School went crazy after hearing this news. This was a good opportunity that no one could give up. It was just that the selection test was not easy to pass. If one's strength was not strong enough, they would not even have the chance to participate in the selection. Jiqing, the selection is about to begin. We have to go back to our respective dynasties to fight for a place to participate. Zhang Yunfeng sat beside Xia Jiqing. This was an opportunity that they absolutely could not miss. As a cultivator, they naturally wanted to enter a sect. That was a place that belonged to cultivators. Once they became a member of a sect, their status would be completely different. Moreover, the various resources in the sect would be far more abundant than what they currently had access to. Xia Jiqing nodded slightly, her pretty face revealing a bit of loneliness. The selection is about to begin, but Hong Zhuang has not returned yet. Could it be that she does not know about this selection? This was a good opportunity that cultivators simply could not miss. It would be a pity if Hong Zhuang missed this opportunity because she didn't know about it. Listening to Xia Jiqing's words, Zhang Yunfeng couldn't help but chuckle. How is that possible? Di Beichen is the young lord of Tiangang sect. He must know about this. Since Di Beichen knows about it, how could Hong Zhuang not know about it? Xia Jiqing reacted. You're right, Hong Zhuang should also be participating in this selection, right? Zhang Yunfeng pondered and shook her head. Not necessarily. With Di Beichen's identity, it is not a problem to recruit Hong Zhuang into Tiangang sect. Maybe Hong Zhuang will not participate in the selection competition and directly go to Tiangang sect as a disciple. The purpose of the selection competition was to give cultivators the opportunity to enter a sect. Bailey Hong Zhuang already had the opportunity to enter a sect. It didn't matter whether she participated in the selection competition or not. Xia Jiqing was stunned, but soon a firm light appeared in her eyes. Hong Zhuang will definitely participate. With her understanding of Hong Zhuang would definitely not enter Tiangang sect like this. Chapter 1103. Seeing that Xia Jiqing was so sure, Zhang Yunfeng was also a little surprised. According to her idea, Hong Zhuang was already Di Beichen's wife, so entering Tiangang sect was a matter of course. According to the principal and vice principal's introduction, this selection competition had a certain risk, and if one was not careful, they could lose their life. With Hong Zhuang's identity, there was no need to take risk. It was better to go to Tiangang sect to cultivate, which would be better. I know Hong Zhuang's temperament. Xia Jiqing smiled faintly. She knew Hong Zhuang's inner thoughts. She had never been a person who liked to take advantage of others. What's more, Hong Zhuang had always felt that taking a shortcut was not a good thing. Only taking it step by step seriously was the best result. Zhang Yunfeng shrugged her shoulders. She didn't know why Xia Jiqing was so sure of her answer, but she didn't object. If Hong Zhuang also participated in the selection competition, maybe they could meet in the arena and form a team together. Jiqing, when are you going to return to the dynasty? Bai Junyu slowly walked over. Since the principal and vice principal announced the news, many cultivators had packed up and were ready to return to the dynasty to participate in the assessment. If they passed the assessment and had the opportunity to participate in the selection competition, they would participate in the selection competition. If they did not pass the assessment, then they would return to the college. Although everyone was extremely excited, only a small portion of them were able to participate in the selection competition. Most of the cultivators did not have the opportunity to participate. It was said that each dynasty only had a few places or even a dozen places. This point alone showed how fierce the competition was. Xia Jiqing's eyebrows slightly wrinkled. I want to wait for 2 days. Hong Zhuang may be back. If she comes back, I will go with her to participate in the assessment. She and Hong Zhuang had known each other for so long. Naturally, she had a certain understanding of Hong Zhuang's life. Feng Bo country was a place that Hong Zhuang did not have a good impression of. Hong Zhuang was not willing to go to Feng Bo country to compete for a place, so it was better to go with her to other dynasties. Listening to Xia Jiqing's answer, Bai Junyu was not surprised. Xia Jiqing had always regarded Bailey Hongzhuang as her best friend. Bailey Hongzhuang had been away for so many days, and Xia Jiqing had been thinking about her. Now it was normal for Xia Jiqing to wait for Bailey Hongzhuang to participate together. He had already expected this before. Then I'll wait with you for a few days. Bailey Hongzhuang will probably be back soon. Bai Junyu smiled faintly. He felt that it was good to have a chance to accompany Xia Jiqing for a few more days. Once one of them passed the test and participated in the selection, they wouldn't be able to see each other for a long time. When Gong Shaoqing and the others walked over and heard Bai Junyu's words, everyone immediately revealed ambiguous smiles. Although Bai Junyu and Xia Jiqing had never broken through this layer of window paper, all of them had already tacitly agreed that the two were a couple. Gong Shaoqing, Dongfang Yu, when are you planning to leave? Seeing Gong Shaoqing and Dongfang Yu, Zhang Yunfeng asked curiously. Now that many people had begun to prepare, they couldn't stay at the school for too long. After all, once they missed it, it would be a big regret. Gong Shaoqing and Dongfang Yu looked at each other and said, "Our thoughts are the same as Xia Jiqing's. Wait a few more days. If Hongzhuang hasn't returned, we will leave." Chapter 1104. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen rushed all the way to Tiangang sect. Tiangang sect was far away, but Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen obviously would not care about the exhaustion during the journey. The closer to Tiangang sect, Bailey Hongzhuang's heart became calmer and calmer. With Di Beichen by her side, even if she reached Tiangang sect, there would be no danger. The only thing she needed to care about was Han Shiling's verbal attack on her. Hongzhuang, Tiangang sect is in front. Di Beichen's handsome face outlined an elegant and charming smile, and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly, and from Di Beichen's expression, she could see his feelings for Tiangang sect. Where he lived since he was a child, even if there were some people in the sect who didn't like, he had great feelings for Tiangang sect. Looking in the direction pointed by Di Beichen, Bailey Hongzhuang only saw the mountains and Xi'an. In addition, there were no buildings at all, let alone such a large sect as Tiangang sect. In this regard, Bailey Hongzhuang was not surprised. Sects and major forces have always maintained a certain degree of concealment. If you don't know the way to enter the sect, you can't get in even if you stay here for 10 days or half a month. This is the camouflage of the sect and the means to protect the sect. Bailey Hongzhuang had a certain understanding of her previous life. There was also a camouflage outside the Bailey family, and only the cultivators of the Bailey family could enter. At that time, even some small villages near the Bailey family didn't even know that the famous Bailey family was not far from them. The camouflage of each sect was different. Therefore, Bailey Hongzhuang did not know where Tiangang sect was in the mountains. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's puzzled look, Di Beichen's smile widened a little. This is the camouflage of Tiangang sect. There is a small enchantment here that hides Tiangang sect. I see. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Just from this enchantment can see the strength of Tiangang zone. After following Di Beichen for a while, Di Beichen finally stopped. Then, Bailey Hongzhuang saw Di Beichen's hands move continuously. Gradually, an energy rune appeared in his hands. In the next moment, Di Beichen pushed this energy rune forward. Bailey Hongzhuang noticed that a rune that was exactly the same as Di Beichen's rune appeared in the air. As these two runes merged into one, the air suddenly set off a ripple, as if a transparent door gradually opened. A new world appeared in front of Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang saw a group of dense mountains, and on the largest mountain in the middle, a huge white building complex appeared in her sight. Obviously, that was Tiangang sect. The dazzling golden sunlight shone on Tiangang sect. The mysterious Tiangang sect at this moment looked holy and mighty, making people feel reverence. It was like a paradise. Bailey Hongzhuang felt that the yuan power in the air here was much richer than the outside world. Looking at the familiar Tiangang sect, Di Beichen's eyes were filled with a smile, Then he held Bailey Hongzhuang's soft hand. Wife, let's go up. Chapter 1105. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen walked towards Tiangang sect. The Tiangang sect disciples guarding the foot of the mountain immediately revealed themselves when they saw Di Beichen. Greetings, young sect master. The two of them bowed respectfully. From their attitude, it was obvious that they respected Di Beichen. However, the two of them couldn't help but look at Bailey Hongzhuang and finally at Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang, who were holding hands. This is my wife. Noticing the two of them sizing her up, Di Beichen suddenly spoke out. The two disciples were stunned when they heard this. However, their reaction speed was extremely fast and they immediately greeted respectfully, young sect master's wife. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichen in astonishment. She didn't expect Di Beichen to be so straightforward. However, Di Beichen winked and smiled at Bailey Hongzhuang before continuing to walk up the mountain. He brought Hongzhuang back this time to introduce Hongzhuang's identity to everyone and let everyone know that Hongzhuang was his wife. As for the other groundless rumors, they should have completely dissipated by now. He didn't want Hongzhuang to suffer any grievances and didn't want to make Hongzhuang feel uneasy. This simple and direct method was the best. After Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang left, the two disciples guarding the mountain couldn't help but be shocked. Looks like what Senior Sister Han said is indeed right. Young sect master really has someone he likes outside. However, according to what Senior Han said, young sect master's wife is a woman who climbs up the social ladder. However, young sect master's wife doesn't seem to be like this. I think young sect master's wife is really beautiful. Even Senior Sister Han can't compare to her. The man's face was full of amazement. There had always been a lot of beauties in Tiangang sect, but Han Xiling was definitely the most outstanding one among many beauties. Normally, there were countless disciples who admired Han Xiling in the sect. Everyone knew that Han Xiling only had young Master Di in his heart. Although the others admired him, they could only watch from afar. Originally, they thought that young sect master had been agitated after staying outside for 3 years, which was why he found a woman to marry. But now, it seemed that this woman was outstanding in both appearance and temperament. She was a perfect match for the young sect master. Yeah, I think this woman isn't an ordinary person either, right? The two of them looked at each other, their eyes filled with emotions. However, they had no right to speak on this matter. Bailey Hongzhuang followed Di Beichen all the way to Tiangang sect. Tiangang sect's location was very high, but with their speed, they still arrived very quickly. The moment Di Beichen appeared in Tiangang sect, the entire Tiangang sect was in an uproar. Di Beichen was the disciple of the old sect master, the young sect master of Tiangang sect, and a famous young talent in the Shengxian continent. No matter from which angle, he was an existence that could not be ignored. Moreover, with Di Beichen's reputation in Tiangang sect, he had always been a person who could call the wind and summon the rain. Here, the female disciples regarded him as their dream lover, while the male disciples regarded him as their idol. In the past, Di Beichen had always stayed in Tiangang sect. Ever since that incident, Di Beichen had stayed outside for 3 years. Even now that Di Beichen's legs had been healed, he still rarely returned to the sect.